Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the transit Venus in Aries. Well, the first thing I find interesting, okay, when Venus transits Aries, of course, it's making its transition from Venus and Pisces. And Venus in Pisces was more about being a little bit more passive in matters of the heart, a little bit more docile, a little more idealistic, and perhaps even overlooking the transgressions of romantic partners a little bit more collectively than average. But when Venus transits Aries, it's making more of a transition to being more aggressive in matters of the heart, a little bit more assertive, and really it might be a little bit more combative too. And really, Venus in Aries is not really about people accepting weaknesses or of another romantic partner. And really, this is a time too when Venus transits Aries. I mean, people can be in matters of the heart a little bit more outspoken, very straightforward in this regard, and also be a little bit more aggressive. And if somebody, like say if you're somebody that's procrastinated in matters of the heart and you haven't found that elusive love, this could be the time when even if your chart indicates you're somebody that's not overly aggressive, and you can be somebody right now that might have a little more of a possibility or propensity toward going after that significant other and trying to find somebody at this time. It could also make somebody a little bit more impetuous and impulsive in matters of the heart. It's important to be careful during this time that it's good to be outspoken and direct with someone, but in relationships it's a time where you might wind up saying something that could come across as a little bit brusque and a little bit hurtful. People in love could be a lot more outspoken and a lot more straightforward during this time in matters of the heart. And keep in mind too that Venus is also about values, and what we value during this time when Venus transits Aries is people being courageous, perhaps your romantic partner being courageous, having fortitude, courage, valor, standing up for what he or she believes in. It's not really Venus in Aries, I think, can loathe weakness during this time. The Aries is a sign that does not like weakness, and they don't respect it. And I think when Venus is in Aries, when it's somebody in a romantic situation especially, people can really not really have a thing about perhaps a partner coming across as weak or overly passive or docile. But this is a time too when we look at this. Now Venus, I mean, what's interesting is that during this, when the baseball season starts, I believe it's April 2nd, 2017, that Venus will either be may very well be at 0 degrees Aries, or it might be at 29 degrees Pisces, depending on the time it starts that day. Either way, it will at least be close to 0 degrees Aries, and I find that interesting because Aries is about sports and competition, and that's the beginning of the baseball season, and 0 degrees, of course, is the beginning of the degrees in a sign. Find that very interesting, and keep in mind too, people, that Venus is not just about love and romance. It's about what we value, and it's about money as well. And it's interesting with the baseball season starting on that day, and Venus may very well be at 0 degrees Aries, that people are maybe spending an exorbitant amount of money on season tickets for that day to get those tickets for that baseball team for all their games at that stadium that year. So I find that very interesting as well. And what's also another thing too about Aries is that Aries is a sign that is associated with professions connected with fire. And what's interesting too is that a lot of times when Venus transits Aries, you have the weather starting to get a lot nicer in a lot of areas in the world. You might see more campfires, and of course you're lighting, a match and getting the fire started, even though it's not considered a profession. It's still a job somebody is doing at that particular time. And I think what else is interesting is that also when we look at this, is that Venus being in Aries is like really people being a little bit more combative in situations in love, and really if a lover or romantic partner is doing something wrong, it's likely to be called out more during this time than a lot of other transits. But the thing about Venus and Aries too is that Aries, okay, is a sign that might be provoked easily, but doesn't hold a grudge and is generally not vindictive or vengeful. And so if you have a situation with a romantic partner that might be contentious, and if there's a flare up, then there's a better chance of having that person say they're sorry more so than often, or at least forget, or the person that blows up may forgive and forget a lot quicker than usual during this time. And this is also about being very action oriented more during this time than usual. It might be more of a love for example, playing games that are associated with combat, like Mortal Kombat, and things connected with competition. It could even be a video game connected with combat, like say a boxing video game or a karate video game, for example. And matters of the heart will likely be pursued with a lot more enthusiasm and exuberance during this transit than a lot of other transits. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the transit Venus in Aries. And stay tuned next time where I'll be talking about the transit Venus in Taurus. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.